The following program is a presentation of the Interfaith Broadcasting Commission.
Water has always been seen as a blessing.
Water is a public service, a human right.
Water is seen as the source of renewal and rebirth.
Water is essential for life itself, not only for human beings, but for plants and for animals on this earth.
I think that water is a gift from God.
For all human beings, it should be equal completely.
It's an issue that Buddhists, Muslims, Christians, Jewish can talk about. They won't disagree.
Water, refreshing, essential, abundant. 70% of the Earth's surface is covered with water, but only 1% is available to drink. Hello, I'm Lynn Redgrave. Join me in the next hour as we look at how this life-giving resource that we so often take for granted is dwindling each day, and how powerful privatization forces are shaping the way water is distributed in our world. $1.1 billion people lack safe drinking water. More than a billion, mostly children, die each year from water-related diseases. I am here, not far from my home, at the headwaters of the Croton watershed, the pristine source of New York City's water supply. Recently, we have learned that this water, too, is potentially at risk. That strikes pretty close to home. But how do we get a handle on this gathering global crisis massing at our doorstep? We begin in what might seem a surprising way, through the lens of faith.
We begin with the biblical text, and the biblical text begins with, in the primordial world, the creation of water. Water is actually there before the rest of the world is created.
God the Exalted says in the Holy Quran, "We made from water every living thing." Water is the source of life, and it is what preserves the life of the living.
Life and death meet at water's edge. We couldn't function without water.
The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said people are partners in three things that are basic to human life: water, grass, what animals graze, and fire, which is energy. In Islam, people must share these things that they cannot do without.
Water is both something life-affirming, life-giving, life-sustaining, but at the same time can be very destructive and very dangerous. Over time, I think the prophets come to realize more of the kind of life-affirming and life elements that are connected with water as opposed to the destructive.
Let justice flow like a stream of water. That means justice is not only the making of human being, it's a blessing of God. It's a grace of God. Let it flow as water. As much as water God gives us and blesses us with, we need that water to flow through justice into this country.
And think about two remarkable women who met side of water. Miriam, the sister of Moses, and the daughter of Pharaoh. Two women that should have been sworn enemies, but indeed found a common language of saving baby Moses from the Nile along the river. And I like to call that the first interfaith dialogue between women.
For Christians, water is so important because it's connected with the sacrament of baptism. So water is very important for the human being spiritually and physically. And that health and hygiene, spiritual hygiene, cannot be achieved unless we are clean from within.
Mikveh is not about cleanliness. It is a ritual purification, marking a change in status where observance is considered an act of pure faith. It is not the water, but the actual act of that transforms and purifies.
Adeline Samantha, I baptize you in the name of the Father, and in the name of the Son, and in the name of the Holy Spirit.
In the Church's liturgy of baptism is linked with the whole history of salvation. We're reminded in the prayer to give thanks for the waters of creation over which God brooded. And in the New Testament, the very incarnation of God as Jesus is nurtured from the waters of Mary's womb, then is baptized by John in the River Jordan, and asks us to go forth to all the nations to baptize. So water is far more than mere drink and refreshment. Water is a sign, a symbol of the very grace gift of God.
One cannot achieve purification of the body, clothes, and the space, except with water. Water is what cleanses the human body, the person's clothes, and the place of prayer.
Somehow the mystery of life might be understood in these transformative moments when you would cleanse yourself and start again.
But it is not just among followers of the Abrahamic faiths that water is central to a community's belief system. Just out in San Diego, California, is home to the Pala Indians.
Pala is called a place of water for the tribe, so it's, again, an integral part of the tribe.
We need to have our water to survive. We need the water for our animals to survive, our groves to survive.
Without water, nothing grows, you know. We wouldn't have our medicines, you know, so we have to understand that. We have to respect that water, you know. It's just so precious.
Pala Indian, many Native American tribes, celebrate the centrality of water in a sacred ritual called the Sweat Lodge Ceremony.
We bring the stone people in, we'll put water on them and bless them like that, and they'll steam us off, they'll clean us. They clean us, you know, they clean us all up, get all that gunk off of us, you know, all the impurities out of your body, all that stuff that you carry around, the envy, the jealousy, the hatred, all that. So it gets rid of it all, give it to the stone people. The steam is our breath of life. It gives us things that breathe that steam. It's our most sacred thing we have is the steam for us to help clean us up. You know, without the water, there would be no steam.
Water comes from God. Water comes from the Creator. Water is a right that is given as a human right, as a natural right.
You know, there's certain areas that used to be plentiful with water. Well, now they're drying up. They're becoming deserts.
Of course, not all life's rituals grow out of our faith commitments. Some are just for fun. On the banks of Lake Erie, a very different ritual plays out each summer. The Great Lakes supply an abundance of water, not just for recreation, but also for drinking. These bodies hold 95% of the nation's fresh water and 1/5 of the world's water supply.
It's the greatest body of water in the world. You can't drink oil or you can't bill, but if you can only last about 5 days without water.
These are our Great Lakes. These are extraordinarily important natural and cultural resources for the entire country.
Western states like California, Arizona, and Texas could greatly benefit from this water if those who set water policy in the Midwest and Canada agree to share it.
What we say to the South Dakotas of the world or the Phoenixes of the world, sure, you got two choices if you want to use our water. One is that come here and reestablish your business or industry here in the Great Lakes region, or you can get it in your areas of the country. We'll be happy to ship it to you in little containers with malted beverage. But otherwise, we're probably going to have some significant issues with you if you wish to try to get it in other forms.
I think it could be shared with others in a humanitarian emergency, and I think any responsible, concerned environmentalist would say that.
If you don't have water, you build golf courses that require watering.
If you don't have water, you shouldn't necessarily be putting a swimming pool without a cap on it of any sort so that the water just evaporates. You shouldn't have one in every backyard. So if you move to an arid area, you need to be prepared to live with less water.
There are no easy answers. In 2005, 8 Great Lakes governors and 2 Canadian provincial premiers pushed for legislation to increase control of Great Lakes water at the level.
What it's all about is it says that what you do with your water in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, has an impact on people in Detroit and Cleveland and Toronto, and they ought to have a say in how that water is used. That's the fundamental principles behind the agreement, and we think it's a very significant, important agreement, and are hopeful that we can get the legislatures and Congress to adopt it soon.
If Congress were not to uphold the pact and were to assert federal authority to take water out of the Great Lakes, it would be a huge threat to the lakes.
We can protect and restore our Great Lakes. We just need Americans to speak up and ask firmly and strongly members of Congress to do something about it.
Once we've got that in place, we believe we will have a very strong compact, not only for managing these questions of whether or not there should be any situations where you're allowed to divert water out of Lakes Basin.
In Wisconsin, people in communities surrounding the Great Lakes find themselves searching for alternative water sources where suburban sprawl and dwindling groundwater is creating tensions on both sides of the Continental Divide.
From 1868 to about 1918, Waukesha was known as the Spring City, and people came here from all over the world, mostly from the United States, but people from all over here to drink the water. At first it was to be cured of diseases, and then it became a social center, and people came here for the social life. It's kind of ironic being from Waukesha, where we used to say, come here and drink our water and experience what it's like to be here, and now we're saying, can we have some of your water, please?
Waukesha is a community that's growing. It's a suburban Milwaukee community, and where it lies is just outside of the geologic basin. So technically their drinking and returning to the system is actually flowing into the Mississippi River. And they may just be 40 miles or less from Lake Michigan, but geologically speaking, the water that they're using is actually returning to the Mississippi.
The big short-term issue that we're dealing with is radium in our water. We are under an order from the Environmental Protection Agency to get rid of the radium in our water. The longer-term issue is finding enough water to meet our current future needs for the citizens of Waukesha.
What we're looking at is what our long-term answers are, and we did a study that basically looked at all the options that were available to us and came up with 2 options, that being the Great Lakes Supply and Western Well Supply.
Because of constant growth, as you can see behind me, there's acres and acres that every time we turn the corner on a farm field, there's another subdivision going in. And the city of Waukesha itself has ongoing needs, and they're projecting further growth.
They're draining the water. It's down 600 feet. 600 feet. You know how many years it's going to, how many decades it would take for that water to replenish? I don't think anybody really knows.
If we set up municipal wells that tap into the shallow aquifer, do we create other damages to the environment? Number one, do you dry up wetlands? Do you lower the water table such that people that are on private wells run out of water? Types of situations.
First item before us is the Lathers annexation. I would like, instead of moving to the presentation, I would like to repeat what I said at the start of the meeting, just to refresh the memory of the council and the public. In preparing for this important item today, I had met with the city attorney and learned that an annexation proposal like this requires a 2/3 vote of the government body.
Annexation itself only adds to these problems because it paves over and makes impervious surfaces on what was formerly a farm field, which is an excellent recharge area for the shallow aquifer system. So at the same time you're adding to your demand, you're reducing your supply as well.
There's no doubt in my mind that it's going to impact it. Just the runoff, for one reason, and the fact that the water cannot seep through the ground now. You start putting on top of it, and they put lawns on top of it, and start throwing chemicals on top of that to keep the dandelions, etc. away. And you know what you're doing to your own drinking water?
Waukesha will set some precedents for other communities and other areas, not only in Wisconsin, but other communities that border the Great Lakes that may or may not drain back to the Great Lakes.
Tapping into the Great Lakes as an alternative or a long-term solution is really not a very good idea. The Great Lakes are an ecosystem unto themselves. We are on the other side of this divide called the Subcontinental Divide. All of the water that lands on the ground here flows into the Mississippi River. We're part of the Mississippi River watershed, not part of the Great Lakes watershed. And to stick a straw in Lake Michigan to solve our problems that really haven't been to this point addressed is not only extremely unfair, but short-sighted also.
Personally, I think Waukesha needs to take strong looks at other alternatives. We're really hitting the wall with a lot of different issues that to most people I think might sound unrelated, but they're very related. Invasive species, pollution, water quality, water quantity, and I'm not sure that the general public understands that.
I do think that there will be a scarcity if we keep using it the way we have been. And I think we as a people have to become more and more aware how all of our actions have a ripple effect on the world around us.
I think the greatest threat to the Great Lakes right now is a lack of awareness. People in general take them for granted. We need to be, again, more aware of where our water comes from, where it goes when we're done with it, and the role that we play in the endless cycle to protect these resources for future generations.
But who really owns the Great Lakes, or water in general?
You and I own the Great Lakes. Everybody owns the Great Lakes. Public trust law that goes back thousands of years to the Roman Empire.
The answer for me to who owns water is that no one owns it. It belongs to the earth. It belongs to all species, not just humans. It belongs to the future. It is a human right. It is a public trust. And it must be considered part of our collective heritage to be handed on to future generations safely.
I would say that it's part of creation, and we don't own creation. We're stewards of the land and the waters. So while we have the right to use it as drinking water, and we may have the right to use it to haul freight, and we may have the right to use it for sports and sports fishing and such, no right exists without a corresponding responsibility to maintain the water.
And so we return to the Middle East.
This piece of property, this sad, wonderful, anguished, exalted piece of real estate in the world since time immemorial, since the biblical stories, has been a fight over the water sources. Part of the conflict here in this region is not just a conflict over land, it's about which land and where the water sources are in these different points of contention.
Water is an issue that requires cooperation between Israelis and Palestinians. And we have to find equitable ways of sharing the water resources that we have, taking those water resources from pollution, of allocating them in a way so that everyone can enjoy the fruits of this land, and in producing new water sources that will enable us to grow and prosper in this shared Holy Land.
There simply is not enough water for the population, and the population is growing significantly.
We depend on collection wells for water. In the summer, there is a great shortage of water in the West Bank and Gaza.
If you want to solve the problem of justice, of two-state solution, of a shared Jerusalem, you have also to solve the issue of resources.
We have this problem with the Dead Sea. and the area of the Dead Sea is shrinking by every year. Unfortunately, most of the water is being polluted with chemical wastes and wastewater coming from many of the Israeli settlements along the Jordan River. What we hope to do with this project is to save the Dead Sea, maybe taking it back to the same levels that we had before. Eventually, the Sea of Galilee basically will have very low levels of water, and the miracle of Jesus Christ, peace be upon him, will be repeated by everybody visiting that Sea of Galilee, and everybody will be walking on the Sea of Galilee.
Since 1967, we are not allowed to drill in a new groundwater well. All the water resources from 5 groundwater wells located on the other side. We don't have one drop of our own resources in this side. And now we have to go all through long process to get a permit to pull the water from these groundwater wells to this village. And this is going on since more than 2 years.
When a value is put on anything, that immediately those who have the resources to purchase what they want to purchase or need to purchase are privileged over those who don't have the resources. And I would say we have to think carefully about how we utilize resources as a human community and as a global community, as opposed to thinking about our own individual needs or desires.
When we talk water, we are talking about something clean and that potable water. And the connection between the clean water and the spiritual holy water is so close. It's the right of everyone to real clean water.
In both the United States and the Middle East, the problem of water scarcity is exacerbated by politics and pollution.
One of the great threats, of course, has been the pollution and the contamination of the water systems through an enormous industrial effluent that has gone into the Great Lakes.
We're standing here in front of beautiful Lake Erie, and to the camera I'm sure it looks clean, but we know that this is one of the most polluted lakes in the world. It has what's called a dead zone, which was actually gone through concerted effort during the 80s, but is because different branches of legislatures have just abandoned this.
A set of chemicals that are fire retardants has built up dramatically in Great Lakes fish and wildlife and in human beings. It's being found in breast milk and blood of citizens of the Great Lakes Basin. We knew 20 years ago that there was a risk this would happen, but because of the bias in favor of allowing chemicals to be introduced into business and into commerce, we didn't act, and now we've got this new cleanup mess that we have to deal with.
With the number of species that are coming into the lakes that are destroying parts of the food chain, it is unclear whether we can recover, whether the ecosystem, the Great Lakes, can restore itself, can heal itself. So I'm worried, in each passing day, the probability declines as to our ability to restore the Great Lakes. It is very possible that the Great Lakes are getting to, or may even be beyond, a point of recoverability.
Near San Diego, Pala Indians fight to keep clean water flowing.
It was nice living on the reservation when there was a lot of water. We went down to San Luis River and did our clothes, washed them on the rock.
We used to go up and down those streams playing, and they had a swinging bridge that we used to play on over there.
Oh, we'd run across, jump off it, and it was there for a purpose. When it was full of water and there was no way to get across, that was the avenue to get across.
It was just really amazing how that dried up, and we were left with nothing.
But now, San Luis River is just gone.
Well, Pala has always relied solely on groundwater as our main source of drinking water, and the San Luis Rey has always been the source of that drinking water. The problem was that back in the 1950s, Lake Henshaw was constructed where it diverted a lot of the water upstream from us. So the tribe not only doesn't much water flowing on the surface. As a matter of fact, there's very rarely water on the surface.
The Pala people get their water from an aquifer that is located beneath the surface of the ground, but that aquifer is getting lower and lower every year, and even the rains that arrive don't recharge it to its previous levels, and more water is being taken from that aquifer, and the fear is that it eventually will also dry up.
We watch the water table in the wells, monitor it, the drop. It's dropped probably about 5 feet over the last 10 years.
To make matters worse, plans are underway to put a landfill, Sacred Gregory Mountain, which sits above the aquifer.
The Gregory Canyon landfill is a landfill that was passed by ballot initiative. The developers, Gregory Canyon Limited, who want to build that landfill, went to the county to get a permit to build a landfill, a permit like any landfill would have to get, and they were denied because you don't put a dump on a river. So once they were denied, they went around the process, the legal process, and took it to the ballot, and it was passed by ballot initiative. And what that basically does is it gives a land use designation that's not only adjacent to the river, but also on a sacred site, and it allows them to put a landfill there.
Gregory Mountain is, as you can see, it's a very beautiful place. It's very sacred to us. In the creation story, it's where the Punisher came, and he's a soul collector. I feel if they put this dump here, they're bringing him back, because eventually it will pollute the water, or it will take some souls.
As they drive past their sacred site, they look up at their sacred mountain and they see it being defiled by the presence of and pollution that not only is visible on the surface, but pollution that is going to go into the air, and that could trickle down into the water.
Then we begin all that poison and everything. So I don't want the landfill here.
If you think about the things that you put in your trash on a daily basis, old pesticide containers, plastics, motor oil, the things that people dump, the things you see on the side of the road, think about all those things flowing into your drinking water. And if I wouldn't drink.
The Pala are suing to prevent the landfill from polluting their water supply.
God created this land. When you look around this valley, God's work is beautiful. And he did create this world so that the water could be recycled and replenished, and there's a water cycle where the water goes into the air and then comes back down and percolates. But as development happens and diversions happen, such as Lake Henshaw, where you're diverting water out of its natural stream and its natural course, you're taking away the ability of Mother Nature to provide you those things that God wants you to have.
Well, I hope they don't put a dump in, and I hope people start conserving water a little bit more too. He's got to have water like the rest of his life, and then his kids got to have water. So if they pollute it, then I don't know where they'll get water from.
It is definitely a blessing. It's our main source. That's our life. And without water, we can't exist.
Water is a limited resource. Once it's gone, it's gone. There's no way to replace it. And when Mother Nature is interfered with and you take away the ability to have safe drinking water, there's no way to replace that. So it's an irreplaceable resource, and I don't think that people really consider how valuable that resource is. And in the United States, it tends to be a lot about money. And if this is allowed to happen here, what's to say it's not going to happen somewhere else? If this landfill success, as far as its owners are concerned, what's to stop them from doing this anywhere?
The US and the Middle East are not the only places where water is a pressing issue. When we return, we will visit other parts of our globe and explore strategies that address this looming emergency.
Troubled Waters will continue in a moment.
A refreshing stream, a wooded glade, it seems so idyllic. But the clean water we take for granted is disappearing, here at home and around the world.
We are doubling the rate of use of water use every 20 years in the world, which is twice the rate of population growth. By the year 2025, it's expected that our demands upon water will outpace the supply by 56%. And on top of that, we have whole regions now that are being declared water poor regions, in the sense that they don't have access to clean, fresh water, 1/3 of the population. By the year 2025, it'll be roughly 2/3 of the population in the world that will not have access to clean, fresh water sources.
There's a finite amount of fresh water. The rest of it is either salt water or it's in the soil and not able to get at it. There's a finite amount of fresh water. And we are so massively, and we're diverting it, and we're mining it from the groundwater where we can get access to it, and then flood irrigation where we've lost it to the deserts, that we are actually destroying the fresh water that God gave us. We're actually physically doing that.
The United Nations included access to clean water in their Millennium Development Goals.
Your goal is to meet the international targets for water and sanitation by 2015 and to build the foundation for further progress in the years beyond. This is an urgent matter for human development and human dignity.
Just to be clear, the United Nations has not yet accepted the need for water as a human right. What they have said is that half of the poor people in the world who don't have access to water now should be connected by the year 2015. However, they and the World Bank turned all of this project over to the companies, most of them are European. And these water companies are in there to make a profit. As long as we have that notion, we will never meet those Millennium Goals.
In Africa, the government of Malawi has their own plan to bring water to more poor communities.
We have implemented a number of projects in the areas which we are calling our water areas. And I think we've reached a stage where now we are about to source funding for these two areas. And we hope that in the 2-3 years, it's likely that we are going to meet the Millennium Goals.
In the Central Valley of Bolivia, all 69 families that reside here have access to water thanks to the wells they built. Some even have water pumped directly onto their property. But until recently, finding clean water was very difficult for this farming village located outside the city of Cochabamba.
We used to bring water from the river, digging irrigation ditches, and we would drink the same water together with the animals.
There wasn't anywhere else to get water, just this polluted water with worms. That water is what we drank.
There is no help from the government. We have been left by everybody. There is no support.
The problem with water in Bolivia is a problem that poor countries all over the world have. Cochabamba has doubled in population since I first came here in the early 90s. So you have these huge communities on the outskirts of the city that are new, and they don't have water, and part of the reason they don't have water is because it's a big investment of infrastructure. So the real issue with getting water to the outskirts of places like Cochabamba is how do you finance it and how do you organize it? And that's a challenge for Bolivia.
The Central Valley took matters into their own hands. With loans from several non-profit organizations, they built wells and water pumps to keep up with their population growth.
The water we bring is from Valley Viloma.
From the Viloma River, it comes from up there. It comes from behind the mountain, and that supports us 24 hours, south, west, and north. When the dry season comes, there is no water. We have just a little, this much, and we share it.
Water unites us. Water gathers us in a round table, all community members and my community. It's the same in other communities.
The community of Primero de Mayo would agree. Pablo Fernandez and his family settled in this area when there were only 3 houses. Now 10,000 people live here.
There were more people, and there was a problem with water. We didn't have water. We had a small well. Water was scarce.
The one that got to the well later in the day would get dirty water. So if you wanted clean water, you would have to get up very early, say 5 or 4 a.m.
We decided to organize ourselves in water. We clean here, clean there, made a deeper well, and we tried to get water from the other side. That is what we have done.
We were able to perforate a 60-meter well. Today, we have improved the management, and we have also perforated more wells. We currently have 4 wells from which we get water, and we have our own system, and each neighbor own water meter.
Now we have water every other day. One day we have it, and the next we have nothing. That's the way it is, but it is fine. At least now we have clean water.
Primero de Mayo is near the site of a water war in the year 2000. Pablo and his neighbors weren't directly involved in the war to stop a private company from charging residents exorbitant high prices for water, but they joined the fight anyway because they could empathize with their neighbors.
The subject of the water war has always been in my heart. It was like they were going to take them to slavery through water.
We think water is not a private business. No, water is for all, with no class, race, or religious difference. We think that united is the only way we can achieve great projects.
We are not the owners, but the beneficiaries of water. Water is the blood of the earth. It is nature that God has given us, and we have to protect what God has given us.
We all have the right to drink water because God created it for us all, for everybody. So we need to share among all, and here, distributing the little we have.
Water is where the family is. It has brought us all closer. Water belongs to everybody. Water cannot be anybody's private property, not even a community's or a foreign investor or transnational company. Water is part of Mother Earth's generosity. Water has to continue to be part of this life, and therefore we will keep struggling so water can continue running in the rivers, can continue gathering in lagoons, to continue giving life.
The Lord said to Moses, "Go on ahead of the people and take some of the elders of Israel with you. Take in your hand the staff with which you struck the Nile and go. I will be standing there in front of you on the rock at Horeb. Strike the rock, and water will come out of it, so that the people may drink." Near the ruins of the ancient city of Petra in Jordan, some believe this very spring marks the place when Moses struck the rock. Local Jordanians still get their drinking water from here to this very day. Whether or not this legend is true, there can be little doubt from the majestic ancient ruins of Petra and the systems and water channels that nourished this city that water has always been central to commerce and community. The passage from Exodus, a sacred text for Jews, Christians, and Muslims alike, is symbolic of the central water in the practices of all 3 Abrahamic faiths, a sign of the regenerative power of creation itself. Today, scientists have become the new prophets, trying to find ways to quench a thirsty world.
Nepal, in some ways, is representative of a situation which is much more universal. When a woman goes out and collects water from us, chances are that water will be contaminated. If her children drink that water, the chances are that they will have diarrheal diseases. Moreover, 1 in 10 children in Nepal are dying from waterborne diseases.
Susan Murcott teaches at Massachusetts Institute of Technology. When asked to speak at a water conference in Nepal, it was the Nepalese women who taught her a lesson.
When I attended this conference in 1998 and actually met the women whose lives were impacted by the ocean problems, and they looked me in the eye and I looked them in the eye and they said, "My children are sick and dying and you are a water engineer who knows the answers. Tell us how to solve this problem." I felt a big responsibility to come up with some solutions that would address that problem. Though MIT is famous as being the pinnacle of high technology, it's also a pinnacle of entrepreneurialism and creativity and innovation and problem solving. And we are using the best and brightest to focus their attention on this, one of the biggest problems.
Well, the Nepal project is a good example
for students to come together with interdisciplinary backgrounds and work on a real problem, and at the same time experience some of the rest of the world that many students don't get a chance to visit.
Well, one of the most grave or sort of pressing problems in the world today, in my opinion, is diseases caused by waterborne pathogens. So you have, the leading cause of childhood death in Nepal, so sort of attempting to clean this water.
We need to take 2 steps to clean the water for these women in Nepal. The first step is particle removal.
We're now just addressing removing the arsenic from the groundwater for household use. And this year we're tackling 3 technologies, and I'm doing an iron-coated sand technology that will remove arsenic when the water is passed by.
The second step is that we need to more completely remove microorganisms. We take out the particles, but not all. So we need a disinfection step as well as a particle removal step.
Murcott and her students answered the plea of the women of Nepal by developing an inexpensive, easy-to-use filter.
That is one of the very important reasons why I choose this program instead of other offer that I got from other universities. I have the chance to work in a developing country and actually do something good for the people in developing country.
What Susan has and what she brings to this project is something that I see from all around who are attracted to her and who are attracted to this project and interested in these things, is a genuine desire to make a difference, not through small steps in science sometime off in the future, but now. These are pressing problems that need to be solved now.
The 2 biggest water resource challenges in the 21st century are water pollution and water scarcity. And my work has focused on water pollution. And it's in the developing world that has the biggest water pollution problem. It's the biggest challenge. We engineers think of ourselves as problem solvers. Well, this is a very big problem, and I think it's one that we have the tools to address.
Malawi is often called the warm heart of Africa. This peaceful place is well known for its golden shore, stunning natural scenery and friendly people. But behind the warm smiles lie troubled hearts.
We know that we are living in a world whereby water is depleting because of the environmental degradation that is taking place all over, and this is also the case in Malawi.
The water is contaminated. People are suffering, especially the children with diarrhea.
Malawi's population is about 12 million people. We estimate around 4 million people not actually having access to safe water in Malawi. People are walking long distances to get their water, and even the water that they are collecting is dirty water. It's water that is not safe. Young children before the age of 5 dying because of water-related diseases. If these children were able to have access to safe water, 6,000 deaths every 15 seconds could have been prevented.
An Illinois-based Christian organization called the Marian Medical Mission works with African villagers to shallow sustainable wells.
We've been able to maintain the cost of the wells at $300 a well. Of course, that's the donation that pays for the cement, as well as the transport and the pump itself. The technology that we're using is that it's all produced in Malawi. So it's basically a totally locally produced pump.
The ownership must lie with the local people. The decision-making process is not only done by Marian Medical, but it's actually done by the people themselves who decides where the water point should be located. So that when Marian Medical actually pulls out of the areas, the people themselves will take on the responsibility of managing the facilities by themselves.
The program is progressing well. Last year, we made 7 wells. This year, 100. The community is enthusiastic. The staff are already on the site waiting for the people to come to work.
The villagers and volunteers work hand in hand, digging wells, crushing stones, molding bricks. It's hard labor, but it's also a labor of love.
government largely depends on donor support. When donors are not supporting the national government, it means national government is not able to provide these social services.
Once the well is completed, it's time for prayer and time for celebration.
The wells reduce waterborne diseases in the area. We are grateful and thankful. It was a dream we had. Now it has come to pass. Now people have drinking water.
Partnerships are essential in finding lasting ways to solve the unfolding crisis. Nowhere is this more pressing than in the Middle East.
We believe that it's essential for Israelis and Palestinians from the center of their societies to work with each other in order to find solutions for the issues in conflict and to build programs of cooperation that will engage us in an ongoing process of building peace between the two communities. Imagine Israeli and Palestinian researchers working together on a center on Alexander River Basin or someplace else. There was a joint water source or a joint desalination plant. There's so many possibilities for cooperation.
The Palestinians and Israelis recognize that we have shared aquifers, okay? And accordingly, we have Israeli-Palestinian Joint Water Committee. And this Joint Water Committee is supposed to give the approval and permits for all project water and wastewater. If we as people put our common interest into technology that will give us a cheaper water, everybody will be living happily and we don't have to have war over anything.
Conserving water in isolated Palestinian villages in the West Bank is critical. A program initiated by the Middle East Council of Churches is called rainfall harvesting.
We collect the water from the rain using the roofs of the household as catchment areas. And then through pipes, it's transferred to the water system, collected all the winter season, and then when it's summertime with no water, they just pump the water from the system to small tanks or small reservoirs on top of the roof, and they can use it through taps in the house. It's very important nowadays to concentrate on domestic use because Palestinians, they're all farmers in villages. They depend on planting. Every household, it used to have its own cistern, let's say. They use it for domestic and for agriculture.
My hope for the future is that Israelis and Palestinians realize that we have no choice but to share this land, and that would bring prosperity to all Israelis and all Palestinians, to close the gap between the rich and poor, the rich Israeli society and the poor Palestinian society.
This is a huge issue even today. Who controls resources? Because that ultimately is the source of sustenance and peace and conflict resolution.
Maybe you will take from me this clothes, no problem. You will take my glasses, no problem. Maybe you will take some money from my pocket, no problem. But to take from me a glass I'm drinking from, it is my life.
Water was also agenda at the 9th Assembly of the World Council of Churches. At their meeting in Porto Alegre, Brazil in 2006, the Assembly called on people of faith to work together to preserve and protect water resources against overconsumption and pollution. The Assembly lifted up water as integral to the human rights of all.
We are embarking on a century where water will become the central issue of the planet.
The water is more than a human need, it is a human right.
If we want really to succeed in meeting the objectives that you have set for yourselves, then we have to work together.
During the last couple of years, water became central to our work more and more. A number of churches are active in this arena for years. But with the struggles around water privatization, with the growing awareness that water is an issue that is for people's lives, many churches and church-related actors became involved, and so it was only natural that WCC started to take this up.
We are seeing the possibility that through water we might even see the uniting of people of faith in a common cause.
My hope for the outcome is really that it gives a strong impulse for the churches, that the Assembly gives us the encouragement and says, yes, as member churches, we want to do this.
The Assembly urged churches to support based initiatives that enable local people to exercise responsible control, management and regulation of their water resources and prevent exploitation for commercial purposes.
The church have the people at heart, and the poor have to be supported by the church. Those who lack justice have to be supported by the church.
The Lutheran churches in India has made the year 2005 and 2006 as the year of water. And it is involved in water, helping people, also coming up with clear strategies.
It's absolutely not too late for the world's people to come together and understand that this gift of ours is and must be restored.
And it's not too late to save the Great Lakes.
Can the Great Lakes be saved? Absolutely. They can, but it's going to take, millions, literally millions of people, the right thing for all the right reasons.
This is the second annual Healing Our Waters Great Lakes Coalition Conference here in Cleveland, Ohio. The Healing Our Waters Coalition is comprised of more than 85 organizations at the national, regional, and local level, all of whom have a mission of protecting and restoring the Great Lakes.
They're putting the program where it should be, in the public eye of the United States and all the 8 states in the 2 provinces.
We're entering a new age of worldwide water scarcity. People are starting to become used to the idea that maybe somebody can own the water. They can tap the water from the ground or a lake, put it in a bottle and make a profit off it. If we continue to allow that, I have no doubt the Great Lakes will be at great risk.
I'm opposed to the bottling of water for sale outside of the Great Lakes Basin at the detriment of that basin.
If you live near one of these huge bottling plants, it's a problem right now. In Michigan, one of the facilities has been found by a court to be drying up, lowering the levels of lakes and streams in the area.
We really have to, again, in our world, stop and ask ourselves when we drink bottled water, what are we doing? Are we commodifying water? Are we allowing ourselves to separate ourselves enough so that it doesn't matter anymore if the public systems deteriorate because I can always buy it? It's way more expensive, and therefore it's out of the range of the ability for many poor people. What we should be demanding here in the United States and all over the world is that our public water systems are clean enough that they can right out of the tap.
I'm deeply concerned about the future of the Great Lakes. This is our drinking water. I mean, what is more personal and spiritual than the drinking water? And we are polluting the water that we need to drink.
I'm optimistic. There's a lot of gloom and doom out there. People can always talk about all the problems, but ultimately, Mother Earth, she'll clean up herself. The question is, when she does it, are we still going to be here? If we're going to preserve ourselves as a people, we have to preserve and protect the other life that's around with us. We need to do those things for our own sake, and that, to me, is our sacred duty.
Magnificent, isn't it? Water pollution, privatization, and the relentless dwindling of fresh water supplies can seem overwhelming. There is much we can do to preserve the flow of clean water for everyone, now and in generations to come.
Work to clean up water systems in your area, join river keepers and clean up a river system. Water Watch here in the U.S. is a wonderful organization doing excellent work.
What is really essential is that we not simply allow governments through the public sector alone to run our water systems, but we must have active, direct involvement of citizens and communities as much as possible in making decisions.
When it comes to water, don't ever take it for granted. Water is a God-given right. Water is a human right. It's something that may not always be there, and they need to treat it with respect, and they need to protect it. We need to be aware of the issues for people around the world, because someday that could be us.
We can walk forward and say collectively that water is nature's gift to humanity, or God's gift to humanity, to teach us how to live together with each other and how to live in harmony with this gift.
Just as the rite of baptism reminds us that water is a sign, a symbol of God's free gift of love and grace given to all people, water is also a right given to all, never a commodity simply to be sold and bought for profit. The Church in baptism and in its advocacy for water rights for all speaks of God's justice.
The next time you enjoy a cool drink of water, realize how precious it is. Take simple steps to conserve. Replace outdated appliances that use water inefficiently. Fix leaky faucets. Don't let the water run unnecessarily. But more than that is required. Access to clean water is under threat. We need to exert pressure on corporations, legislators, and government officials to make policy that uses water wisely and well and to the benefit of all. This resource, essential to life itself, is a gift from God. It cannot be reserved for the rich and powerful, but for all the earth's children. Use the gift with gratitude and share the blessing. I'm Lynn Redgrave. Thanks for watching.
You can purchase a copy of Troubled Waters by calling 800-533394.